Let's start with the ongoing push to have a public inquiry into foreign interference, despite the long-awaited recommendation from former Governor General David Johnston and now Special Rapporteur not to move ahead with one.
When I began this process, I thought I would come to the same conclusion, that I would recommend a public inquiry. Well, it would have been an easy choice. It would not be the correct one.
His recommendation for public hearings instead of a public inquiry is drawing harsh criticism from the opposition. Johnston is also recommending opposition leaders get special security clearance so they can review the classified documents he based his decisions on, something both Tory leader Pierre Poilievre and Bloc leader Yves-François Blanchet rejected.
It's a dumb trap. It's for those who are not very careful. They want to say, we offered you to see everything. You saw everything. You cannot say a word. This is a secret.
We have to put this in the hands of a trusted judge rather than in the hands of Trudeau's ski buddy, cottage neighbor, family friend, and Trudeau Foundation member.
NDP leader Jagmeet Singh, meanwhile, whose party props up the minority Liberals thanks to its supply and confidence agreement, says he will take the security briefing, but only under certain conditions. So where does it all go from here? Fred Delorey is the former Director of Political Operations for Prime Minister Stephen Harper and was the 2021 Conservative National Campaign Manager. He's now a managing partner with Delorey Public Affairs, and Anne McGrath is National Director of the NDP. They both ran the campaigns for their respective parties in the last election, the election that's at the heart of the most serious of the allegations of foreign interference. Hi, Fred. Hi, Anne. Good to see you both again. Fred, I wanted to start with you and actually start by taking a step back, if we could. You experienced some of what we are talking about today, right? It's formed the impetus or the genesis of a lot of the reporting. You managed the 2021 campaign. When we're talking about this concept of foreign interference, what does it mean tangibly to you?
Right, so during the campaign, we were hearing some anecdotal evidence bubbling up from our local campaigns of strange things happening. There was advertisements showing up that weren't authorized properly in certain places that had a very negative message against Conservatives that was clearly directed to Chinese Canadians. There was anecdotal evidence of social media on WeChat and things that a lot of Chinese Canadians use about very negative and aggressive communications against Conservatives. After the election, when it was done, we had noticed there were some strange things that happened. A lot of results seemed off in about 13 or so ridings. So we had asked our campaign teams to dig in and find out, like, if they heard of other things happening. And we've heard instances of intimidation of voters, of different things like that was going on.
So how worried were you once you saw the kind of collective review of that?
Well, it was striking. It was something I'd never seen before or thought of as a problem before that would happen here. So it's something that we raised these issues immediately.
And what about you? What about the NDP? Was there a huge amount of, was this issue prominent at all for you in the last election?
It wasn't a dominant issue. Most of it actually were things that we were hearing through the task force, the site task force. You know, people were talking about these kinds of things. And one of the big questions that I had all the way along was, this is all interesting information about this, but how do we know what to look for? What do we do when we look for something and find it? What do we do with it? Who do we talk to? How do we deal with it? And that's what I found was really missing in the whole process, was the actual tangible, how do you know what's happening? When you know it's happening or you think it's happening, what do you do about it?
And you're meeting with them, if I'm not wrong,
next week,
tomorrow, I think, about the by-elections.
That's correct, yeah. So this task force exists during elections, and there's 4 by-elections on right now, and and obviously it's a very, very prominent issue. It wasn't as dominant an issue during the last two campaigns, but certainly these by-elections are being run in the shadow of it being a huge issue.
You wrote about how, Fred, it wasn't a big issue at the time, and even when you told the Conservative caucus about your concerns, I think you used the word, you were dismissed.
It was, look, there was after the last election, there was a lot of issues bubbling up within the caucus and a civil war of sorts, and where we saw a leader overthrown, and I think a lot of people didn't want to hear any issues that may have cost us seats, so they were focused on other things. But it was certainly, people did not take it seriously a year and a half ago when this first came out.
And what do you think changed, that they saw some political land to mine, or that the report, there's been a ton of headlines basically from the Globe?
I think they go hand in hand. I think there's it certainly blew up when those massive national stories broke with different reports from CSIS and whatnot pushing this out there. Of course, there's also politics to be played in this. There's gains to be made. I think people see in this, and that's what they're pushing. So
some of the politics this week, Anne, revolved around, after the report came out for Mr. Johnston and his recommendation not to hold an inquiry, the offer that he suggested the Prime Minister make to opposition leaders to take a security clearance, and look at the documents, the classified documents on which he based his decisions ultimately. Mr. Poilievre, Mr. Blanchette said no way. Mr. Singh appears to be open to the idea of taking that briefing, but on some conditions. What is behind that approach?
Well, for one thing, he's the leader of a major national political party, and it's incumbent on him to do that. I don't know how the other two leaders can get away with saying that to me, their approach seems childish and immature. It's a little bit like that old children's, hear no evil, see no evil kind of approach to it. They don't want to be confused by the facts. So I think that what Mr. Singh is doing is he's saying, I'm a national party leader who wants to be Prime Minister and who is taking this issue very seriously. And if we can have more information, we should get more information.
The other two leaders say that would inhibit them from being able to ask questions they think they should be able to ask of the government. Do you think they should take the briefing, or are they in the right not to, Fred?
It's a very tough question, because you're right in some regards where they can't criticize or attack as much as they have been if they've seen it all, and they are limited in what they can say after. But at the end of the day, if they can go and look at this stuff and actually see what the facts are, that does play into how big a problem this is and how do we fix it. I'm a conservative. I want Pierre Poilievre to be Prime Minister after the next election, and I'm worried that we are not taking it seriously enough and actually making sure we fix these problems, to fix these holes and make sure we have good legislation going forward that can protect us from these attacks. So if Mr. Poilievre was to take the time and actually go through this stuff, he may actually come up with some good solutions to how we can fix this moving forward.
Is anyone really, and I'll ask you, I know you're both partisan, but is anyone really that focused on the solutions at this point? I know that there's a demand for a public inquiry, but there are a lot of people out there, Anne, who say it might air some information about the problem that we don't know yet, but ultimately what does it do at this point to advance solutions that might be needed sooner rather than later?
Well, I don't think that, we have had experience with hearings that don't do that, like where you can actually find out what happened and come up with proposals. Are the proposals always acted on? No, not necessarily, but there is a way actually to move forward in this. There is also a way to view the documents, as Mr. Singh is going to do, to view the documents and still be critical. Like, for instance, both the Prime Minister and the Special Rapporteur have seen the documents, and they seem to feel quite free to say, we don't need an inquiry, we need public hearings.
But they don't say a lot about why they've arrived at that conclusion. There is a lot of stuff they say that when they, I can't talk about it because it's national security.
No, but somebody could look at those documents and say, and reach a different conclusion.
Right. But I think there are still a lot of groups here who are unsure, Fred, and last word to you on this, necessarily of the scope of the problem. Even take away the political aspect of this, like how big is the issue we're dealing with? Because even Johnston in the report admitted it's pretty serious and it's amplifying.
Right, and it seems to be, and one of the things we got from our involvement in the task force as the Conservative Party, when we raised concerns, is we basically got, the response was the officials shrugged their shoulders to us and said there's legislative gaps and there's nothing that we can do. So we want, what are those gaps and how do we plug them? How do we fix them? How do we make sure that we're going forward in the right way so that the next election we can put this behind us and not worry about it? From, again, all parties, we're all potentially targeted here.
Which, by the way, could be any time. Right? There's
Anytime.
No set date for it at this point. Okay, I'll leave it there. Thanks so much, Anne McGrath and Fred Delorey.